Welcome back from lunch. I hope you enjoyed lunch, and I also hope that you enjoyed the first session of our Innovation Summit. From the feedback that I've heard, you enjoyed it a lot, so that's positive. So let's see if we can do exactly the same, have the same energy, have the same interesting discussions in the second part of our Innovation Summit. I'm 100% sure that we can do that. So we will kick off with a client panel, a client discussion, handpicked Jacob Karlstedt from Danske Bank, Head of Personal Customers in Denmark. Nick Bach, COO of IN3 in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And Markus Kirsten, Group Director of Credit Risk and Analytics and NOBA Group, operating in the Nordics and Germany.
That's right.
Yeah, and I'll take my seat here. And I have handpicked you because I know that I can ask you questions and you will not give me any corporate answers. You will just, be thought provocative and, speak directly from the heart, right? So I will kick off the first question, maybe based a little bit around what Rasmus spoke about, the speed of development. And we speak about leading the future. But what is the future in your world? Is it half a year? Is it 1 year? Is it 5 years? How do you define future in your organizations? Should we start with you, Markus?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a great question. It's and I don't think we have a definition, but I think it's almost clear now from the presentation we had here from NVIDIA just before lunch that the future is probably already here. It's probably not with me at least, maybe with you guys, but it's as one of the sci-fi authors said at some point, that the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed. And I think that's what we're seeing. It's probably here, but not fully.
Yeah. Nick?
I think looking from an N3 perspective, we are a scale-up in the Netherlands, moving fast, always having like a mission, a stronger vision for the future. So we are aiming for like 5 to 10 years. I think that will be the future that we're focusing on right now. But on the same level, we are very opportunistic. We have the availability to be flexible. So we are constantly changing, and we call that adaptive leadership. That's kind of a running joke within the organization right now, because we change, I think, our vision and mission now, not the big picture, but the short term, like every half year. So we want to be really making all the use we can of all new innovations. So I think, for instance, when AI, ChatGPT came available, I think the whole team jumped on it and started using it for everything. And so probably our whole code base is online now, but that's the downside, but that changes anyway. So.
And what's the view from Danske Bank, Jacob?
Yeah. You can say the future is here now. Things are going so fast, so sometimes we're just forgetting that the future is here. And when we're seeing how fast things are actually going, what we believed 5 years ago was not happening with that speed that we expected it to happen much faster. It's just accelerating right now, and being ready for that, being ready for the regulation. It might be we having AI can help us, but we have absolutely no idea how much it can help us yet, and we have to see that. So it's hard for preparing for the future, but so you just have to be prepared all the time.
But do you work, we heard about, the macroeconomic perspective from both Andy and Bjarne. We heard about polycrisis, etc. Do you work with future scenario planning in Danske? Or how is that working?
We are working, of course, with planning, and especially you can see we have strategies. It's Forward 28, it's called right now, and it's out in the market. You can all see it, and what we expect of returns. That is public, of course. But internally, how we are working with the digitalization is, of course, kept internally. But we are working with short term, what we need to deliver, and longer term. The challenge with the longer term is that we don't know how to do it yet. And so you need to work with the uncertain that we don't know how we're going to deliver that. But on the short time, we know, but on the longer, we don't know. And that's an uncertainty we just have to live with. So it is, and that's it's not always fun when you're working in risk.
I could imagine, and it leads me to the next question, and it's a little bit, the standard question when we speak about also new technology, etc. And how do you balance the short-term results with the long-term strategy in your planning, especially around the technological evolution? Marcus, how do you do that in NOBA?
Well, I think we have a history of thinking and getting through to the organization that the short-term tweaks and grind lead to long-term results. So I joined NOBA in 2019, just after we launched mortgages then. That was the most recent product that we launched. We haven't launched a new product for 5 years. But within the products that we are, then we tend to go on that daily grind, which in a sense is the short-term work or what we see works that later builds up to longer term.
And what about in your organization, Nick?
Well, looking at in3, we are a spread payment BNPL solution. And I think when we launched our newest brand, that's called in3, before that we had a different name and we completely rebranded. So basically everything we have is 5 years old, 6 years now. And we have always been working towards the future plan of building a white label BNPL platform for other parties to use, which we can fully service. But yeah, you're not going to launch that from one day to the other without building a product, without confidence from the market that you're able to do it. So what we did was build a short-term product that was like our own label in the Netherlands, that's called in3. And we're now taking next steps, moving towards a white label solution together with Ideal. It's like the biggest payment processor in the Netherlands. And we're now evolving into this. So that's why we're sort of combining like this short-term, long-term strategy. And I think also what you just said, we have a vision, we know where we want to go, and we also know that how we're going to do it is not available yet. So we have to make sure we keep being a front runner and are fully aware of everything that's happening, of all new technology, of all innovation, constantly looking out in the market, what's available, and to keep up, to be one of the first to adapt. So that's how we try to combine that.
Great answer. So today we are speaking about leading the future and new technologies and what will happen. But we also, I think, it's also important that we look back a little bit. So if we look back 5 to 10 years, what would you say is the most important change that has happened within tech, data, regulatory, that had the most business impact leading up to today? Should we start with you, Jacob?
If you're talking about the financial industry, then mobile pay, of course, is coming from us. So but there's a lot of elements which has had a huge impact. Regulation, you can say GDPR, anti-money laundering. There's all these elements is giving us a lot of headache of how we are going to handle that. And then you can say the mobile pay, not the mobile pay itself, but the technology for mobile pay in general has moved things a lot. And we're all getting reminded about that when we are out traveling and we're realizing that we can't use mobile pay. Now it's disappearing, but 2-3 years back, there was a lot of countries where it still was cash. So that digitalization about mobile pay is definitely something which has moved us a lot. And then the regulation, that has been a tough one, and it will be tougher. With AI coming in, I think the regulation from EU is coming in Q3 or Q4 this year, and that is definitely going to give us some headaches about how we planned to do things and how we then have to do things, because it needs to, of course, be compliant as well. But I think that the mobile paying and digitalization about that is the big step we have made forward.
What's your take on it, Marcus? What do you think?
No, I agree with Jacob in terms of regulations. That's what I would point out. But also maybe the things that the regulations enable. So take PSD2, for example, we weren't able before to use direct bank-to-bank payments, let's say, or you weren't able to use PSD2 data for credit granting before there was a regulation, and it may be imperfect, but it also enables things. Although I agree with the headaches, though.
What about from a more fintech perspective? What do you think?
I think looking back to the previous presentation about APIs, I think connectivity is key. For instance, we need to make decisions in actually a split second. So within a second, we've decided whether we accept someone or not. And on the same, what you're saying, PSD2, those innovations are really driving innovation and making a difference. And from a legislation perspective, I think we are mostly feeling pain from new legislation. So, for instance, CCD2 got real in October, November last year. And we have been like in a quite unregulated territory up till now, because from a BNPL perspective, you're not under full regulation. And now we will be within 2 years, so that will be quite a big.
You'll be in good company here
Yeah,
with Jacob. Yeah.
It's fun, but not always. I heard.
You can definitely call for some good advice. I would say so. Yeah, no doubt about
Thanks.
that. So, but taking it a little bit back to your customers, right? So, from a client perspective, with everything ongoing right now, and thinking about your own organization, of course, what is the single most important change we as customers will enjoy over the coming years? And we can start with you, Marcus.
Oh, that's difficult. I mean, we're so boring in that sense. I told you we haven't launched new products for 5 years. If you say half a decade, it feels even longer. I think that despite that it's more of the same in a sense for us, some of the key things happening right now, and now I have a bit of a Swedish perspective here, we're based in Sweden, is the combat against fraud and financial crime, and not only from an AML perspective and a regulatory perspective, but combating the fraud which is actually unregulated by AML now, where people are able to conduct investment fraud, let's say, and so on. And here we have support from the Swedish bankers, the industry association, where the Swedish banks have gone together, and some of the banks operating cross-border to set up a program to combat crime. And I think that's probably true not only for us, but for many other banks, that looking ahead a year from now, a year and a half from now, hopefully we can put an end to a large part of the financial crime that has been enabled also by part of the technological advancements, because previously, you needed to go into your bank to get the loan. And there were many downsides with that, but one of the upsides was that it was difficult to fraud and pretend to be somebody else. But we had bank robberies. We had 1 bank robbery every week. Now we have 0. So there's good and bad things about it, but maybe nobody really asked for that. Emma, 85 years old, should be able to transfer all of her savings in an instant to an account in another country. Nobody really asked for that service, but we just got it, because why would you add a delay here? When we're building all these APIs, why would somebody add a delay for 2 days? So we got that by instant, and now I think we're backtracking and say, do we need that by the instant? Does Emma needs to transfer all her funds in an instant to Morocco? Is that required? Maybe not. So I think against financial crime is one of the things for, at least from a Swedish perspective, I think that will happen across many banks coming year or so. And some of them are new tech, but in many ways it's actually stopping part of the new tech that enable new things.
That's a good point. What can I expect from Danske, Jacob, as a customer?
Hopefully you can expect more personalized or tailor-made financial advices, both by using AI, but also by, of course, using transactional data. So that is at least the aim. Funny enough, the regulator is helping us with having that aim by telling us everything needs to be individual and concrete. But I do see that we will be able to deliver that in the future. Right now, we can't deliver it, not for all loans. You can say consumer loans is one thing, but when you have a large range of different loans and different requirements, it's becoming difficult to make the instant decisions from a purely technology perspective. You need to have an advisor in NOBA to help out on that. But I do believe that we in the future will be able to give mortgage loans and other advices, investment loans and so on, where we can tailor-made it or personalize it much more than we can today. So that's what you can expect.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. So do you have any clear expectations around, timeline? Yeah.
I know, to
No.
be honest. As I said before, we don't know how to get there yet. We have seen the technology in other industries. We are working closely together with Microsoft of some of these things, how we can utilize the data and optimize that. But setting a date, we don't know. But right now we can still do it. We can do it manually, but that is time consuming. And with the competition in the market, demand on returns, we have to digitalize it. And that needs to happen. But right now it's not possible on the mortgage loan, where some of the other products, it's easier because it's less regulated.
And where do you get your inspiration from, Nick, in developing your company and new services, etc.? Where do you find inspiration?
Yeah, well, sometimes I go to these summits, like the Experian Summit, and then
Was that planned?
you wrote that down. So. No, but I think we constantly keep our eyes open, looking what's happening with regulation, looking what's happening in other parts of the world, looking what's happening in like larger financial institutions, banks, and on the same time look at our competitors. I try to use every Dutch competitor every once in a while just to see how does their product work, how does it function, did they change anything, because normally you don't launch anything like a press release if you've adapted your risk engine or something like that. But on the same time, also you have like all these tech companies that are in the scale-up phase. I think you have a very vibrant Dutch community with scale-up startups, medical tech, regulatory tech, and what we find out is that every once in a while you meet up, you get new insights, and it can be on a medical thing, but it's still using technology. So it can be very insightful. And what's happening right now, like I said, CCD2 is coming, and that means that in 2.5 years, all BNPL in Europe will be regulated. There's really a lot going to happen because we have like this entire fintech business that is like all new companies completely built up from scratch. All new technologies, APIs, connections. We don't have any legacy, and now we're forced into the same kind of regulations, and then that will bring a lot of new innovation. So I try to meet up with a lot of people having that same problem or opportunity.
It sounds like you have to ask the question to the regulator, what our customers can expect in the future. Because we're just following what the regulator more or less are telling us.
I think it's a good point. We actually 2 years ago had the FSA on stage speaking more around, the regulatory pressure, etc. So I think it's a valid question. Unfortunately,
it's funny to have them on stage,
Yeah.
especially they're not promising anything, but as we don't, especially not the fees. But when you then challenging them, so how can we do that? Why do we do that? Oh, you have to find it out yourself.
Yeah.
Just giving the guidelines.
Yeah.
It's all about the guidelines.
Yeah.
So another question is about, we saw Rasmus's very powerful presentation today, and we also saw Jesper speak about Autoproof and the development of his business. And in your organizations, how do you actually work and foster a culture where people are embracing change and new technology instead of actually being afraid of new technology? Because you can be a little bit scared, right? Especially listening to Rasmus, I would say. How do you do that in NOBA?
Well, I wish I had an answer how to not be afraid of the presentation before. I think when I look at Rasmus' presentation and kind of linking that a little bit actually to Andy Will's presentation that was here before. You can think about how does this affect the economy overall, and how does this affect us as financial institutions and in the financial industry? And I think that if you look at the picture here of the cat and generating the cat and so on, I think that there's a few industries where you can see these like enormous breakthrough things you absolutely couldn't do before. And then I sometimes struggle when I look at the banking industry, also given regulations, then what are the fantastic video examples that we can create? And I think that the best that I can come up with are probably boring as well, but they are then linking to Andy Will's here to productivity gains. And well, how is that good? Well, obviously it's good for the banks, but it's also good for the customers, because the more cost-effective we can become, the better we can personalize offers to the customers and give them the best products. And I think that's what we're here for, and that's what it's about. But how to drive that in the culture, I don't have a good answer to be honest, Bo. But I think that's where we see the greatest opportunities, I think, within our organization, and how we can drive that. That would be under productivity gains, particularly, rather than these new super cool videos and so on.
Yeah. And how is it at Danske? That's a very large organization. So
it's you can say it varies depending on where you work, of course, because there are different areas where you have routine jobs which will disappear in the future somehow. On the other hand, it's efficiency, as you just said. So if you want to deliver more with the same number of hands, and then you need to be more efficient, and you can use that. So how we are trying to communicate it, at least, is that AI, Copilot, and all these elements, they are your new best friend. So they can help you be more efficient during the day. If they're buying in on it, I'm not sure, because there's no doubt that we will be less in the future, and we will produce more. But how we are getting to that point where people are not afraid or scared of losing their jobs, I'm not sure. I can say we went to a conference Monday, Tuesday in Malmö, 700 people in global risk management, and there was a lot of employees who went home being a little bit scared of what is the future actually, and do they have a job in the future. So it's really hard because it's going so fast right now.
And Nick, IM3 is more or less built on, embracing.
Yeah. We don't have any issues with this, and I think that's a combination of a few things. I think our CEO is very innovative. He has an IT background, operations, general management. He did all kinds of things, and he's really fostering and really embracing innovation. So that's helpful. So that's trickling down. That's also very helpful. Next to that, we have a very young workforce with young, talented people, and nobody cares if they have a job in 5 years within 3, and they'll just go work somewhere else. And on the other hand, we're constantly growing, so we're just using technology to not have to hire extra people. So there's also no jobs that are insecure. And then in the same page, constantly have to push the brakes for people to stop adapting to new technologies, because they're constantly using, like, as soon as it's available, then we have like AI generated commercial and branding and these things. And we were looking at integrating AI support in our customer service team, for instance. And it's like, wait, we're not going to just automatically start giving people answers about their personal situations. We have to first check and verify this. So this is like really innovation driven, coming from the core of the organization. So this is like, this is basically what we are.
So very, very much different. You're actually controlling development instead of being scared around it. So that makes sense. We spoke a little bit about it. You touched upon it, Marcus, with the more and more digital approach that we have. It also opens up for more sophisticated and organized fraud in general. As you said, no bank robberies any longer. So the criminals will find new ways to attack. How are you dealing with that? How do you stay ahead of the fraudsters that is almost impossible, I would say. But how do you deal with the fraudsters? I know that especially in Sweden, it's kind of a big challenge.
Unfortunately so, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So organized crime has gotten a foothold in Sweden, unfortunately. And contrary to common belief, I think drugs is no longer like the biggest business unit within organized crime, if you can call it. That is actually financial fraud. And it comes in multiple different ways. It's tax frauds, and it's organized care organizations and so on. And we as banks, of course, are hit in multiple ways, either as an intermediaries linking to AML, or credit busters, where they try to apply for credit, let's say, with synthetic identities. So there's one big thing on just the daily grind on figuring out what are the patterns, look at them so far largely manually that are flagged by our automatic systems, and then take action based on that. And I think we do that. We actually do that quite successfully. I think we mitigate a lot of fraud. We have very limited paid out fraud. But then I think secondly, working together with partners actually has Experian then, and other sources of data to help us, because when you think about it, credit today, less so on the mortgage side, but on the unsecured side and on the BNPL side and so on, what you get in is a list of maybe 3 or 10 fields. Hey, can I get credit? Like you don't get any documents. Like that's what you got basically to work with. So the more we can get additional data points and so on to help, I think that's second, and that's been changing over the last set of years to both the better and the worse. And then thirdly, is that links strongly to the regulatory side. I think unfortunately we're moving regulatory-wise here on making it more difficult sometimes to combat fraud. Like tax authorities in Sweden are pulling away information. GDPR makes it more difficult to share information. If we know we have ongoing fraud, we may want to share it with you, but we're not legally allowed to do so. Even if we know you're going to lose money, and vice versa. So we try to do our best on that, but I think there's a huge part which is regulations here when it comes to making it better to stop some fraud. And having said all that, we as banks can help Emma not to lose all her money being transferred. That we can do and should do. But there's a lot on the regulatory side that needs to find the right balance between privacy and combating financial crime, which is not fully there yet. And we've seen this explosion of financial crime, but not fully there yet to really stop synthetic identities at tax authorities, let's say. They sit and they know that this is a fraudster, but they're not allowed to provide that information to Jacob or to me, let's say.
Is that the same in Danske?
Yeah, it is. You can say now we are primarily a mortgage lender where there are less fraudsters than in consumer. Not said that we don't have any fraudsters, because you can say it's fraudulent to provide wrong information and then getting a loan for a house as well. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we will lose any money. But we do have some challenge with that, and it's like go to Tour de France and say there's no one who's not doped there. They will be ahead of us all the time, but we are trying to do whatever we can with multi-authentication products to get into the bank, encrypt everything. All communication needs to be encrypted and secured. In the future, it will be biometric elements to get in. So we are trying to do whatever we can. Sometimes we get limited by the regulator, but on the other hand, the regulator is also helping us, that we are forced to do a lot of stuff about the customer and understanding when we are onboarding a new customer who they actually are. Where a few years back you were not required to do as much when you're onboarding new customers as you are today. So they're also helping us, even though they are making some limitations.
What about IN3? How do you?
Yeah, a lot of things the same, I think. I think what we most of the time do is try to limit our losses. From the earlier presentations, the most you learn from your mistakes. And it's like, it's a continuous game of like fraudsters improving things, finding new ways. And so what we try to do is monitor as close as we can to adjust our policies, our systems as soon as possible. As soon as we realize that there's like something strange happening, going on, we're accepting wrong people. So we just constantly try to limit the losses, basically. And that's quite effective, because if you have a fast learning cycle, you can find weaknesses very fast. Yeah, and for the rest, also the same, trying to find new technologies, try to find partners for cool things to figure out about who is applying for a BNPL loan. Like you said, you only provide a few data points, and based on that, you need to determine, are we going to take this risk or not? But because it's all very fast, you do get other insights. For instance, when you're using your phone, you can see what the browser is, what kind of keyboard settings you have, IP addresses, whether your phone is lying down, because it's a really high fraud indicator. If your phone is in a fixed position, then it's usually these farms that are just doing the same thing over and over and over again. So we try to put all these digital innovations and technological innovations in our process as much as we can. And up till now, it's quite effective.
I know it's a little bit early days in your organizations around AI. Also, now we heard about the development. But speaking about AI, do you have any ethical question marks about the use of AI in NOBA?
No. No, I would say we don't actually.
Okay.
But the reason for that is that we don't use AI for any of our core processes. So we don't use it for credit granting. We don't use it for employee assessment. We don't. And I think that's where the ethical borders probably are. Whereas installing a chatbot, or I can search through our policy documents to look up the rules of forbearance, I have less ethical doubts with it. So at least, no, not yet.
What about in IN3?
Quite the same, actually. It's we try to use it as much as possible in our supporting processes, but in need for acceptance, doing on personal information, we try to keep. We don't try. We keep everything out, because the whole thing with a self-learning model is that it's rewriting the rules, and that you don't want to do that with your acceptance policy.
Jacob?
Same. We don't use it yet, but there will definitely be some ethical challenges that we will face in the future when we start using it. Because can we rely on the data which is coming, and how do you do with privacy? Are we sure about the GDPR and so on? And what is actually how do you feed the machine? What is it fed with? So there will be some ethical questions which we need to answer in the future, but we're not there yet. But as I said in the beginning, it is going so fast, so we have to think about it now, because it's coming so fast.
When do you think you will start to work with? You spoke about the conference that you just had. So any timeline around
It depends when we're talking about using it. If you're using it in decision models, it will take some time. Yeah, from here you have transactional data, but if you start using AI for decisioning models, that will take some time from now on. But we are using it for other elements in the bank, in the IT department. They are using it. We have Danske GPT now, which is open for all employees, where they can go and like chat GPT and use that internally. So we are starting rolling it out to all employees, but not in decisioning models. So it's internal for now, and it will definitely come in the future. And I can't give you a date of when we're starting using it in a decisioning model.
That's also a good answer. So thanks for that. So my last question for now, until we open up for questions from the audience, it is about leading the future, and it's about the most important part, the customers. So when we sit here in 10 years' time speaking about NOBA, IN3, and Danske Bank, what do you think your customers will tell us about your organization versus how it is today? What do you think they will say about NOBA in 10 years' time, Marcus?
I hope that they will say that we have been able to offer them a product which is, to your point, tailored or specialized to their particular needs, and we offer that better than anybody else. Also a very boring answer, I think, but that's fundamentally what we're about. Hopefully we combat the fraud as well along the way.
Yeah, also very boring, I think.
My answer, you mean, or yours?
No. I have the
Yours.
same answer.
You
and
had
it's
the
also
same,
boring.
okay.
No. I think looking at what we are offering, now we are like a spread payment solution that we're offering, but basically what we are selling is the thing behind it is like financial flexibility on your smaller purchases that you're doing online with a guarantee that it will be delivered. So I expect in the future, because all products will change due to regulation and innovation, but hopefully in 5 to 10 years they will feel us like now we say Uber. Well, that's maybe a big ambition, but we're not selling a product, we're giving a solution.
Last but not least.
Yeah, but as I said earlier, it will be tailor-made products for the individual, and it will be digitalized. It will be on some kind of device, whatever device which is there in 10 years' time, and then hopefully they will think about Danske Bank as number one in ESG.
Okay, yeah.
So I hope that at least.
Good.
Nice ambition.
Especially
Yeah.
with our history.
Great ambition. So thank you for that. Thank you. Great discussion. I will open up for questions from the audience. So is there any questions for the panel up here? Anything you would like to know more about? No? And I already asked all my questions, so
No, but actually, I have one thing I think which will be part of the future as well, and that we haven't touched on that. That's both the blockchain as security, and there will also be something about cryptocurrency from the central banks. If we're talking 10 years from now, I'm sure we will have some kind of that from the central banks, and then there will be some security in blockchain as well.
it's a good point actually. 2 years ago when we had our innovation summit, we had Lars Seier, that most of the people in Denmark at least know, speaking about blockchain. And I've been speaking with him before, so and he said, blockchain is going to change the world in the same way as the internet did. And yeah, but that's what he said. And we're still waiting for that, but it feels like, nobody's really talking about blockchain technology right now. Now it's all about Gen AI and everything. So I think it's an interesting point, and it is something that will have an impact, probably not as much as the internet, but any views around that?
Sorry, guys.
No, I mean, I concur with that. I would also imagine the central banks. I guess the Danish central bank has also made pilots in crypto. Yeah, it seems like the general movement on central banks. And having said all that, I mean, most money today, certainly in the economies that we're speaking about today, is digital. So a big part of the things the blockchain will solve has already been solved. Then there's many things that blockchain can solve, and additionally, right? But that just is a little bit less sexy than it's digital, and it's already digital. So I mean, I would be cautious to the internet statement, but I would also imagine the central banks will issue central bank-backed crypto in 10 years.
Anything else I forgot about the future that we need to take into consideration?
We don't know.
No, that's
That's a
okay.
very open question.
Yeah.
Have we forgot anything about the future? I don't know, Bo.
No.
I think we have forgot something.
Probably something.
But I don't know what it
There
is.
is something we don't know.
Yeah,
so,
I think so.
Yeah. Let's end the discussion with that note. Thank you for taking part of it. That is a question. Okay. Okay.
Hello.
I'll just speak loudly. So the question is for Danske Bank. You said that you had made GPT available internally in the bank, so everybody can use it for internal purposes. What have you done to get employees to adopt to using it, and are you doing anything in a structured way? Because I feel that making it available is the relatively easy part, but getting people to use it and also to use it sort of in a controlled manner, try to have some strategy around it, that's the difficult part.
Yeah, we launched it, I think it was early this year, and everyone who getting access to it needs to go through a training before you can actually, and then we have forced people to take the training, which means then everyone gets the access. But you're right, we need to show them how they can use it. So how do you write a prompt, and how do you do that wisely so you can use the information which is actually there? And there's a tons of limitations still, because we can't put in all data. There's a lot of GDP, there's a lot of confidential data which we cannot add to it yet. And we need to find out, but we need to train our employees to actually start using it. Because if we don't start, then suddenly we are behind. So we want them to get used to using Danske GPT or ChatGPT in the spare time, so they are ready for the future when they can start using it. But it needs to be structured of how they can do it, and there's been some training they need to pass with tests and so on to get it.
Any more questions? No? So then I will say thank you. A round of applause from the panel. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you, Jacob.